Typically, when we think of exercise and fat loss, our first thought is to go to cardiovascular work. But if you're looking for a faster, more effective, and longer-lasting way to fat loss, well, your best bet is compound resistance exercise. Or, simply stated, going big to get small. Today on the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast.
Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast
with Garrett Williamson.
Health, wellness, exercise, nutrition, and a whole lot more. Got questions? Call us and leave a message at 251-278-EDGE or message us at Personal Edge Fitness on Facebook and Instagram, at Team PE on Twitter, or personaledgefitness.com.
Good day and welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Garrett Williamson, president of Personal Edge Fitness. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and thank you for those folks that reached out on our call line and left some questions about basal metabolic rate. It's interesting, the questions that we had, because we're actually going to cover some of those aspects today, so thank you for calling in. And if you have any questions about this podcast or any others, or as always, if you have any questions dealing with the myths of health, fitness, and wellness, please contact us at area code 251-278-3343. That's 251-278-EDGE. You can also reach out to me at Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. And that's also, of course, our website and our Facebook page, which is Personal Edge Fitness. We've been receiving quite a few questions through that, and we sure appreciate not only you tuning in, but also your interest, because it helps us shape how we're going to go with the next podcast. I want to make sure we're getting information out there and dispelling the myths that people have questions about. And this particular topic, it's kind of hot this time of year. We're coming up on the first of the year, and of course, the second most popular New Year's resolution is losing weight. The first most popular, if you're interested, is actually getting organized. Whenever I talk about New Year's resolutions, I always talk about the party I was attending, where it was a wine tasting party for New Year's. Now, this wine tasting started around 6:30, 7 o'clock, and of course, we rang in the New Year at midnight. So we had a good 6 hours of wine tasting. You know, I like to think that all of us paced ourselves, and I won't answer whether or not we did. But I will say there were some rather interesting toasts, especially as the night went on. And my favorite toast that evening was one of my fellow, let's just call him a fellow enophile. That's somebody that really is into wine. Stood up and said, "May your problems of your new year last as long as your New Year's resolutions do." Now, I'll probably repeat that every time I talk about New Year's resolutions, but I thought that was quite funny. 75% of the people that come to us come to see us about weight loss, and that's why I'll be covering several aspects of weight loss in the upcoming podcast, as I did with the quick hit just last week on basal metabolic rate. It's amazing. I've been talking about this particular topic for years now. Actually, I started this kind of training for fat loss in 1991 is when I really started studying the effects of compound exercises and resistance in fat loss. I was shocked to find the significant difference and the significant improvements on fat loss through compound resistance exercises as compared to cardiovascular exercises, because typically when we're thinking about losing fat, you jump on the treadmill. Go for a long walk, get on the elliptical, go for a swim, go put the time in, go out and run, what have you. That's always been our go-to, or was at that time, all the way up till when I started looking at 1991. That's when that started to change, where people started using resistance training. But the reason I bring up the dates is that I'm surprised here in 2021 that still, I would say the majority of exercisers that I encounter, their first thought about dealing with fat loss is through exercise, is through cardiovascular exercise. I'm a fan of cardiovascular exercise, as I've said many times on the show. I'm a competitive multisport athlete. I do sprint triathlons, I do standard aqua bike, and I also do aquathlons. I'm actually going to be racing in, I think it's my 8th World Championship this year, 8th and 9th, depending on the dates and if there's no cancellations. And so I'm big into cardiovascular exercise. My favorite, even though I ran track in high school and college, I only ran 120 feet, so believe it or not, running is not my favorite. Swimming has always been my choice of cardio, and I love it. I do it as much for my head as I do for my body. So I'm not against cardiovascular exercise, and before I get into this, I want to make sure you understand I've got plenty of cardiovascular pages in my facility. I will always have those. It is extremely important, no matter what you're trying to do, whether you're trying to lose weight, you lose body fat, whether you're trying to honestly tone up. If you're trying to gain muscle, you should definitely have cardiovascular exercise in your program. It aids every single one of those goals. I don't know of a single goal that it doesn't help. And I've talked about that in previous podcasts, and I will go over that in some upcoming podcasts, because I think I need to drive that home. So I've spoken quite a bit about the values of resistance training. But the time that you spend doing cardio work, as far as fat loss is concerned, it's usually quite a bit of time. It's been shown, it's been studied. We've known this since, Lord, it's the early 80s, if not earlier than that you typically don't get into fat stores until you're a good 15 minutes in your cardiovascular zone. That's 60% to 80%. Now, keep those numbers in your mind, because I'll use those in a few minutes, especially that lower number, that 60%. You're in your cardiovascular training zone when you're at 60% of your maximum heart rate. And if you don't know how to figure that, a very simple way of figuring maximum heart rate is 220 minus your age, and then multiply that either by 220 minus your age would be your maximum heart rate, and then you multiply that by the percentages. 60% for the lower end, of course, 80% for the higher end, and that puts you in your quote-unquote cardiovascular zone. But usually in cardio work, you're not burning fat until you get to that 15-minute stage. Don't throw it out. There's still so many things that you're doing, from exercising your heart, which is highly important, to increasing circulation, to making your body more efficient, which is going to make it burn fat more efficiently. It's going to make it grow muscle more efficiently. Whatever you're trying to do, it's going to help quite a bit. But the trick with cardiovascular work is, once you step off of that cardiovascular machine, or once you get out of the pool, once you finish your run, once you stop your walk, whatever, the fat loss, the direct caloric burn associated with that exercise is over. Now, you may have posted some great numbers. I'm not against that. You can get anywhere from, well, Lord, you can get anywhere from 0 to AIDA as far as caloric burn. But just for argument's sake, I'm going to use these numbers, and it also depends on your size and what have you that dictate these things. But anywhere from, typically my clients get anywhere from 250, 300 to 500 to extreme bouts where they're doing cycling, where they're burning 1,300, 2,000, 3,000 calories in a cardio bout. But that takes a lot of time. I'm a fan of it. That 3,000 number I've attained several times doing century rides, and I thoroughly enjoy it. But it takes a lot of time. And the caloric burn, once that bike stops, is over. I mean, you've gotten your good out of it as far as burning fat is concerned. But opposite of that is, in a short resistance session, your caloric burn actually continues. I'll get into that in just a second, but let's talk about a little bit about what this type of training, doing compound exercises, and I'm going to start talking about anaerobic intensity right here at the beginning. So if we're going to get into anaerobic intensity, then I would heavily encourage you, if you're after fat loss, not only to do the resistance exercise, the compound resistance exercises, but I would encourage you to look into HIIT, high intensity interval training. Now that's a kind of a buzzword of late, because there's so many HIIT-based programming out there. There's all kinds of single discipline fitness centers out there that do nothing but HIIT training. Well, the reason you're seeing all that is that this information that we found out in the late 80s, early 90s about resistance training burning fat has now really come to the forefront. And if you're not going to do HIIT training, I don't throw out the compound complex exercises, but I would heavily encourage you to do the HIIT training because of several things. First being anaerobic intensity. Now, I've spoken about the difference between anaerobic and aerobic training before. Anaerobic training means without oxygen. Anaerobic means with oxygen. Simply put, in an aerobic situation where you're doing some cardiovascular work, you can usually, if you're in an aerobic state, then you can carry on a conversation. It's I like to describe it as, you'd like to stop, but you really could keep going. Anaerobic is without oxygen, and that is sprint, recover, sprint, recover, sprint, recover. Why didn't Usain Bolt run that same speed for a mile? Well, he's in anaerobic capacity. You can only go for short bursts and what have you. But you're going to do a lot of work with the heart when you're in an anaerobic state. You're also going to do a lot of breaking down of muscle tissue in an anaerobic state. And anaerobic capacity is actually your best measurement for how you handle stress. So in HIIT training, you're going to get into an out-of-breath situation, an anaerobic type situation. So I heavily encourage doing these compound exercises in compound exercise training. The reason the compound exercises do so much more than cardiovascular is you have you have a large caloric burn for the initial workout. I mean, you may burn in an exercise bout or resistance training bout anywhere 200, 300, maybe sometimes even like just 120. But still, you're burning a good chunk of calories. But you're getting muscle gains. Now, I'm careful with that word gain because we're trying to lose fat. I understand that, but gain is not a bad term. Keep in mind, and if you're watching this on social media, I'm going to do this with my hands. You've heard before that muscle is heavier than fat. Well, that's not true. A pound of muscle weighs as much as a pound of fat does. But a pound of muscle is far more dense. It's far more dense. So it's going to be smaller, but heavier. So I'm doing my hands here, and actually 5 pounds of fat, if you're watching this on social media, would fit about between my hands as if I were grabbing it. And I've got my hands about 12, 14 inches apart here. That's what 5 pounds of fat, that's how much space it takes up on your body. 5 pounds of muscle, I'm bringing my hands down to about 4 inches. From 13 inches down to 4 inches. 5 pounds of muscle is going to take up that much space. That's why they say that muscle weighs more than fat. It really doesn't. It just takes up less space. So that's why you can actually, and I've had clients do this, gain weight. Believe it or not, they gain muscle, but they lost so much fat they actually got smaller in size. This is why this common belief about, I think we finally put this one to bed, but the belief that women that lift weights are going to get really big. No, they're not. If they've got a sizable amount of body fat, which most people do when they start an exercise program, they're going to actually get typically smaller. A lot of times they'll lose weight, but I had a client one time who dropped 2.5 dress sizes. Depending on what style, she could go from 2 dress sizes down to up to 3 dress sizes down. They'll drop that much size, and she lost 9 pounds. She only lost 9 pounds, but she lost so much body fat and gained so much muscle, she looked completely different, felt completely different. These exercises, by using a resistance training to burn fat, this is going to be a shorter workout typically. It's not that you can't go in a fitness facility or at your home and do an hour resistance bout. I don't typically recommend them. The majority of our clients do 30 minutes worth of resistance training because we're looking to be effective. And part of being effective is one thing, making sure that you're making the best use of your time. And the second part of that is making sure that you actually can get the workout done. I mean, if you plan, I'm going to go do resistance training for an hour every day. Really? Is that really going to happen? Does your lifestyle every single day, every single week really allow for that? So you can actually do it in a much shorter time. Sometimes, 5-minute, 10-minute, 20-minute bouts of resistance training are more than sufficient to get these changes that I'm talking about. And what I'm talking about is speeding your metabolism. Now, I spoke about basal metabolic rate in a quick hit that I did just recently. I believe it came out last week, as a matter of fact. And if you haven't checked that out, do check it out. It talks about how many calories your body burns at rest. And that's kind of a finite number, but it's one that you can affect because it's basically built on the makeup of your body. And so at rest, your body will burn this number of calories. That's your basal metabolic rate. But you can increase your basal metabolic rate. You can increase and speed your metabolism, which is nothing more than calories in, calories out. By increasing your basal metabolic rate, you can do that by adding muscle. Each pound of fat that your body stores, actually each pound represents a pound of fat represents 35 calories of unused energy. Now, 3,500 calories is a pound. A pound of muscle is 3,500 calories. But when it comes to fat, 3,500 calories in fat is unused energy. That's what your gut is. You've overloaded calories and you've told your body, I'm going to need these later, is what your body thinks. So it's like, okay, fantastic. We're going to starve coming up soon. So let me just store all this around my hips, thighs, wherever, and I'm just going to pack this away. That's what you've done to your body. That's what you've told your body is going to happen. And no matter what you say, that's what your body's going to do when you take in more calories than you expend. And you're not doing resistance training and turning those calories into muscle. To lose 1 pound, you have to create a calorie deficit of 3,500 calories by either consuming 3,500 fewer calories over a period of time than your body needs, or by burning 3,500 calories worth of exercise. And that's something I do not recommend doing. I'm going to go out and I'm going to burn 3,500 calories. Great. You're going to run a marathon. If it's on a bike, you're going to go and ride 100 miles just to burn 1 pound. So I don't recommend looking at it that way. But a pound of fat and a pound of muscle sitting on your body have different metabolic burns. A pound of muscle on your body will burn basically 6 calories per hour versus a pound of fat, which will burn basically 2 calories per hour. So you're getting a significant difference in caloric burn or your metabolism with a pound of muscle versus a pound of fat. So that's the reason I heavily encourage making sure that you're doing these effective resistance training programs, and you see how after that initial bout, once you've developed that muscle, you actually continue to burn fat, continue to burn excess calories. That one workout could result in hundreds, thousands of calories, believe it or not. As long as the muscle's maintained, it'll be thousands of calories forever. Excuse me, a bit of a tickle in my throat. Always a good reason to catch up on my water. I'm at 60 ounces plus wherever I am in this bottle right now. Tracking that water is one way to make sure you're getting over 100 ounces every single day. Everybody needs that. According to the AMA, to the National Institute of Health, to Stanford Medical, Harvard Medical, all of them. 100 ounces a day, everybody. Back to what I was saying, though. In the compound exercise, what are we talking about? All right, what are we talking about with compound exercise? Let me give you some simple examples. These are big muscle moves, all right? If you're in a gym, these are compound exercises. Now, a bicep curl is not a compound exercise. They're using a little bit of forearm, but you're basically using the bicep. And that's it. That's the only muscle you're using. It's an effective exercise, but you want to burn more calories, you want to affect more muscles? Well, then your lat pull down. Your lat pull down, your row machine, your single arm rows. Now you're involving the bicep, but on top of that, you're involving these big muscles like the latissimus dorsi, the largest muscle in the upper body. You're involving the rhomboids, which is the middle part of the back. You're involving the biceps. In bench press is yet another example. We're using versus like a tricep press down or something. In a bench press, you're using the pectoralis major. It's the second largest muscle in the upper body. It's that front chest muscle. You're also using your triceps, which everybody commonly understands that is a secondary mover in a push type exercise like a bench press. But you're also going to use deltoids. You're going to use a little bit of traps. You're going to use a lot of your shoulders involved in that exercise. Another one, you go to the legs. Well, done properly, a squat is going to work hamstrings. It's going to work quadriceps. It's going to work the largest muscle in the body, which are the glutes, so the entire gluteal group, your rear end. I would do these exercises, but especially the ones I'm about to mention. I would only do these under supervision or making sure that you really have good form. And if you're interested in learning more about that, you can contact us at 251-278-3343, and we'll be glad to set you up and show you how to do those exercises, actually set up a program for you. But these exercises like clean and jerks, or a deadlift, or power cleans. These are exercises that end up using almost the entire body when you're doing these exercises. And therefore, in really 3 sets with some of these exercises, and you can look at a 6-set, 9-set, 12-set exercise regimen, and you're done. I mean, you're finished. You may not burn as many calories in that program, in that particular workout, but boy, the extended benefits because of what I was describing earlier about gaining muscle are almost immeasurable if you continue to maintain them. Again, contact us if you have any questions about those exercises. We'd be more than glad to help you set up a program. Now, I want to touch on this. It's not really on this subject, but it sort of goes hand in hand with the continuing that caloric burn. And if you have the mindset of, I really don't want to take a break. Once I get going, I want to keep burning fat. I understand that. And we always talk about, I always end it in my podcast talking about attaining your level of wellness. Well, that happens to be, in the first podcast I ever did, talked about everybody's looking for their level of wellness. You're looking for that place that, okay, I'm exercising enough. This is how I want to eat. I look good. I look fine. This is where I want to live. That's your level of wellness. That happens to be a mental place. Well, as I've said many times, nobody comes to me for a physical reason. Everybody comes to me for a mental reason. And for many of us, for all of us, our workout program has to work for our head. If you completely dread it, you just hate it, you're not going to continue doing it. So it's got to work for your head. And many of my clients, and I'm one of them, that it's so hard to take a day off. I don't want to take a day off. And it's typically advised to take a day off, to have a day of rest. If you want to do something, you got to feel like you're doing something, you're still moving towards that goal. Well, this is a fantastic time to use your cardio work on your off resistance days, or even on your resistance days, but your off resistance days, to continue that caloric burn and actually speed muscle development. Earlier, I talked about the different numbers. Aerobic state is between 60 and 80% of your maximum heart rate. And I told you I really want to focus on that lower number. On an active recovery, let's say you do a hard resistance session on Monday and you really need to take the day off on Tuesday because you did full body and you're going to turn around Wednesday and do full body again. But you don't want to just hang out on Tuesday. You feel like you're going to be getting fatter if you just do nothing. Great day to do some low, and I cannot stress this enough, low intensity cardiovascular work, somewhere around 60%, of your maximum heart rate, or even lower. I know that sounds crazy, but some simple cardio work. And what you're going to do, you're going to burn extra calories. That's going to make you feel a little better. You're also going to speed recovery of the muscle. Why is that? It's called active recovery. You're actually going to speed your cardiovascular system, even if you're at 50% of your maximum heart rate or lower even. Well, 50%, 40%, somewhere like that. Definitely at 60%. You're going to speed up your heart a little bit. Therefore, you're going to open up those capillaries, those veins. You're going to be running blood throughout the body faster than you would if you were just sitting on the couch, even through a slow walk. And there's been several studies about this, about active recovery speeding muscle gain. And actually, speeding recovery, period. In fact, there's quite a bit of studies going on about recovery, and I have a theory that we're going to learn so much about active recovery and how the body works that eventually we will be able to write up programs so that you can break a muscle down fully and go through some good active recovery and possibly break that muscle down and be able to break it down the next day. In other words, do another workout within or right at 24 hours, if not earlier. Now, no, we don't have that yet, and I do not recommend it at the moment, but I believe we will actually get there because we're learning so much about active recovery. Now, what do I mean by low intensity? Simple. Go for a walk. This happens to be a low intensity day for me. I've had a very, very active week. I'm training for a race, so I've been doing 2-a-day training, and I've been doing quite a bit of resistance training, different types of cardiovascular. I really needed to take a day off, but it's hard. It's hard for my head to take a day off. So what do? I went on a nice 1.5, 2-hour walk today. And it was a walk. It was a walk. But I burned a sufficient amount of calories. If I could have done it for 30 minutes if I wanted to, but it was such a beautiful day. I just kind of enjoyed my morning. But I burned quite a few calories. I feel better about myself because I've gone out and done something today. I've also sped recovery. My legs will feel great tomorrow. I'll do some stretching, and that little bit of cardio is a fantastic way to continue those gains, to make the resistance sessions that I've done far more effective, but also allow my body to fully recover. Now, walk is not the only thing. An easy swim, an easy bike ride, whatever is your flavor. I don't typically recommend getting on some of your resistance equipment. I'm a big fan of all of them because we typically have a tendency to mess with the resistance on those or get a little more aggressive and try to break a sweat because we've got to really work. And you typically will start to work too hard. And if you do that, you're going to impede your recovery. Actually, what you're going to be doing, if you're interested in fat loss, you're going to be going backwards. You're not going to allow that muscle to grow. Therefore, you're going to lose the effects of the resistance training from the day before. So on those days, if you're going for that, using compound exercises in order to burn fat, make sure that you're not ruining your work with intensive cardio after the session, or especially on what is supposed to be your day off. Now, I throw a lot of information out at you, and I know that, but this is something I'm very passionate about, using resistance sessions, resistance training in order to control body fat, because if we use resistance training effectively that way, I've seen too many people that try to cardio their way to fat loss and end up losing so much muscle. This is why you look at some runners that don't do any resistance training whatsoever, and they look just gaunt. Well, they're actually not healthy. They've lost a lot of muscle because they've lost it through burning it in cardiovascular exercises, doing too much cardio. So that's why I'm a big fan of this. It's also much easier. It's a lot quicker. And you can actually go out and enjoy some of your cardio, even at lower levels. Now, if you're working on some kind of a cardiovascular program, trying to get into a race, what have you, some of the things like I'm doing, hey, that's a whole different program. Give us a call. You can contact us at 251-278-3343. That's 251-278-EDGE. Reach out to me at Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. Personaledgefitness.com is our website and our Facebook page. You're welcome to message us there. Don't blow your chances for significant fat loss by spinning your wheels. Using resistance training for fat loss or going big to get small. One more way we help you reach your level of wellness.
Thanks for listening to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Subscribe now and be a part of the show by calling 251-278-EDGE or message us on Facebook and Instagram at Personal Edge Fitness or at Team PE on Twitter, and visit us at personaledgefitness.com.